Hi folks, my name is Ben. This is the Virus Podcast. Welcome to episode 73. Now for those of you who are not familiar with this podcast, this may be your first time listening. This is not a COVID-19 podcast, but in fact a podcast where I have contagious combos and viral viewpoints. So I'll have some things that are on my mind throughout the week. I'll write it down, whether it's self-improvement related. We talk a lot about self-improvement on this podcast, a little bit about current events and anything else that kind of comes to mind within that week time frame. So that's what I'm all about. Appreciate your patience, and you guys can follow me on Facebook. We got live streams on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube, and then I got the posted content on Instagram, Twitter, and Spotify as well. So go ahead and give me a like, a share, a subscribe, a follow, and show me some love. I really appreciate that. Anybody who's been supporting this podcast, even just by watching it on their own time, or whether they watch it on their own time or if they join the live streams that I do every week, I really appreciate it. That means a lot to me, and it helps the momentum of the podcast continue. So thanks again, and keep it coming. So I don't know if you guys noticed, but I've changed the music a little bit just to kind of spice it up. I usually have the same, royalty-free song going on. I've done that for, 70 episodes or whatnot. But lately you might have noticed that I kind of switched it up to some dark synth music. So just kind of switching things around, just keeping you on your toes. And I like that kind of music. Sometimes I'll just vibe to it and do some work, and particularly last night when the boys from Primordial were over here, we were chatting a little bit about our storyline about the upcoming EP and album, and a lot of it is sci-fi based. So when you got that kind of that sound going on in the background, it really helps for trying to create a sci-fi atmosphere and character development and things like that in a storyline. So kind of interesting music. I like it, so I'll just keep kind of shifting through it. I thought I would just stick with one soundtrack, but I've changed my mind now, and I think I'm kind of switch it around a little bit just to not be so mundane with it. So all right, well, so some of the things I'm going to talk about today are about training, learning, networking. I'm going to talk about executing things. I'm going to talk about, let's see, what else? I'm going to talk about control. I'm going to review the 10X GrowthCon that I still am kind of getting through. I got a few more guests here that I'm going to not interview, but give you the notes on how that interview went. And then we'll get into the rant and the quick question of the day. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Let's just dive right in. Let's start with the recap of the week. So I had a lot of good sales this week. Probably not as good as a couple weeks ago when we kind of really sold. Probably sold about $150,000 worth of product in gross revenue a couple weeks ago. But this week was really good too. We had a lot of sales. I think we're up in, I think this week we might have sold, let's see, I know my sales rep sold a couple, and then I sold a couple. So actually probably almost sold 100,000 just in this last week. So we're just killing it. And we could be doing better. That's not me saying I'm getting comfortable because we're doing well. If there's anything that I learned, one of the things I have learned from my mentor Grant is that when things are going good, you double down and you lean into it and you keep plowing away. It's not a time to relax and kick back and start celebrating and start, looking at achievements at that point. It really is the time to put your head down and start grinding a little bit more. Get it while the getting's good. You probably heard that saying before. And so, but we have been doing really good. I had a target to hit $1 million in sales revenue, gross sales revenue this year. We're going to hit that, no problem. I haven't done my second quarter inventory on, the gross sales revenue, but I'm going to do that here either next week, probably this week actually, if I can get to it. If not, I'll work on the weekend just to see where we're at and make sure we're on track to hit those numbers for the end of the year. But I already know we're gonna pass $1 million this year, so I'm super happy about that. I'm kind of stoked and curious to see where we're actually at. So it'd be nice to see, where we're at just within the last 6 months of this year, because we've really been doing good. I've grown the team. Well, I should say I actually lost a couple employees. So there was one time at one point there, I did have 6 employees. Well, 5 laborers, 1 sales rep. And I think we're down to 1, 2, 3. Just lost another one, and because I had to fire him. Just lost another one. So we actually only have 3 laborers, 1 sales rep, but then I did just hire a receptionist to help with that part of the business, and that's been really exciting, actually. It was something that I've always wanted to do for some months now, and I had to just kind of justify it, find the right person. And so we got a receptionist. She's rocking and rolling on it. She's only been at it for a week, but so far she's doing really good. She's got a positive mindset. I really like that about her, and so she's been helping out pretty well so far. And she's good at acclimating and adjusting and doing the things that I ask her to do. So I really appreciate her and value her right now. And I think it's going to help grow the company even more, because it takes a lot of pressure off me from having to answer the phone 24/7 when I'm trying to market. I'm trying to project manage, those type of things. I'm out selling. So there's a lot I got going on. So it's just a matter for me to grow the business. I'm just taking off a hat slowly but surely and delegating it to other people. So that's what growing and scaling a business is all about, is delegating the hats instead of wearing them all at once. So I'm super happy about that. So yeah, I did a lot of sales, did a lot of training, doing that daily training, did some sales execution training, getting into the marketing training now this week. So I'm pretty excited about that. Did some networking, did a lot of networking. I'm really trying to expand my reach, whether it's getting guests lined up for podcasts, valuable guests in my opinion. I got a few guests lined up that I would consider valuable, not only because they're involved in the same atmosphere, that being the 10X movement and Grant Cardone's message, or just any type of self-improvement, but they just seem like some solid individuals and have done a lot of things and had some successes that I would like to talk to them about. And so that's just part of what I wanted to talk about, is reaching up, networking to individuals. And so yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. Got about 3 guests lined up for this next month, so that's exciting. On top of that, I actually am going to do an interview on someone else's podcast for the first time, so I'm really excited about that. It's not I don't get to do that very often. It's always me that's been interviewing people. It's me doing the podcast, so it'd actually be nice for a change to just kick back and talk and kind of riff with somebody and have some good conversations about things that I value, things they value, and put our heads together and really just have some, a valuable conversation on a podcast where I don't have to worry about running the tech part of it and streaming and posting and tagging and all that stuff. So it's going to be a nice little change. And I think I want to start doing that more often, as much as I can. I got to kind of be a little selective with the podcasts I go on, because it seems like, everybody these days has a podcast, including myself. But, yeah, I just want to kind of contribute, and I think that's cool. It's part of networking. It's putting yourself out there. I can sit here and do interviews and invite people on my podcast a lot, but ultimately, for me to properly network, it's going to involve me putting myself out there and going on other people's platforms as well. So looking forward to that. Keep your eyes peeled for that. I'll probably post some, that podcast episode on the virus on my personal page. I do know it's not a live stream, unfortunately, and so I'll have to post the content after that. I know he doesn't even do promo for it, so a little bit does things a little bit different than I do it. So, and that's okay. It's his platform, it's his own thing. People do things differently. So I am excited about it though, and I'll let you guys know how that worked out. So yeah, I had a good week. Let's get right into the contagious combo, all right? So some of the things I want to talk about in the contagious combo, and again, this podcast, just a heads up, I don't know if you guys have been following me for a while and tuning in or watching any of my previous podcasts. If you go back to the earlier ones, they're kind of shitty, for lack of better words. It's a lot of me and Danny. At that time, Danny was co-hosting with me. It's a lot of us trying to figure out things, the tech part of it, the technical issues, that aspect of it, what we're going to talk about, how to format it, how to structure the actual podcast. So it has changed quite a bit. It has evolved. Danny obviously is no longer here. It started out with having no direction, us just talking about whatever comes to mind and not really, I don't even remember if we had notes on anything. It was really, we were wing masters at their best. And so now, over time, you might have noticed that I always have a topic to talk about. It used to be random things, current events, health, science, conspiracy theories, things like that. It started out with those topics, but now it's really primarily geared towards what I value most in my life currently, which is self-improvement. It's something I grind on. It's something I train on every single day. And so I think it just makes sense to talk a lot about self-improvement. And so until I run out of content regarding self-improvement, I'm probably going to keep going on that train for these podcasts, just because that's something I do every day. I train on it. I learn on it. It's something I've been doing heavily for the last 3 years, but more specifically for the last few months, have been doing every single day. And so it's on the forefront of my mind. And so I'd like to talk about it. It's stuff that's helped me. And it's stuff that I think anybody who wants some, insight, maybe, wants to provoke their thoughts a little bit, it's definitely some value for them to kind of sit there and digest and kind of, throw the ideas around in their head, because I'm almost willing to bet that, there's a high percentage of people that just aren't focused on self-improvement. If 76% of people live paycheck to paycheck, what percentage do you think of people just are just living day to day, don't really think about their future, don't really think about what's next, don't really think about how they're going to actually make more income? Some of the most basic things that probably should be thought about, and by the way, I never thought about those things. They were never at the top of my list like they should have been. And so at least for the last 35, 36 years of my life, it's only really until the last 2+ years that I've really focused highly on, equipping my tool belt with more skills and trying to figure out how I can provide more value and in turn receive more income and more revenue. That way I can take care of my family, provide for for income and longevity, not just thinking in short term, but more long term. And so I think there's a huge percentage of people that just don't operate that way. They don't think that way. There are a lot there. If they're raised up anything like me, it's not, it's probably not even on their mind. Getting a good job, getting a steady paycheck, having balance in your life, having those things, those are some of the things that are kind of driven into your mindset as you're growing up, right? You might, because a lot of your family is probably just living that mediocre, that average life. They're probably potentially living paycheck to paycheck. And so it's just something that is fascinating to me, and me being able to make the shift in the mindset and also being able to execute and make some changes in my life by actually taking action. And the amount of change that's happened just by me changing is night and day. It's crazy. It's crazy how easy, I shouldn't say easy. It's crazy how simple when you, the structure is when you do that. When you change your mindset and you actually start taking action and making some hard decisions, some good decisions, some beneficial decisions, things just start playing out for the better. It literally has been happening for me. The things I've been doing, I wouldn't talk like this and I wouldn't be promoting it to some of my friends and family if it actually didn't help me. You know what I mean? I don't sell things. I don't pitch things that I don't value or that I haven't done myself typically. And so, yeah, it's just, that kind of, the reason I'm saying that is kind of gives you a little bit of insight as to why I value talking about self-improvement so much. It's such a loose term that could be thrown around, and that's why I dive into the specifics of each. When I'm doing these podcasts, I break it down. I break it down into segments of exactly what these self-improvement topics are about, how I've implemented them, what they mean to me, if I haven't done it yet, when I'm going to do it, how I'm going to do it, what I've learned about it, all those things. And so it just has a lot of value to me in my life. And I think for those, I guess if I was to give a message to those people, whether it's friends, family, people I don't know that might ever watch some of these podcasts, if you think that none of this could relate to you, if none of this stuff I talk about is relevant to you, chances are it is in fact highly relevant to you, and you should be focused on it. More people should be focused on this stuff. I mean, it's just a no-brainer. There's just so much valuable content to not share with people. And so if you're trying to avoid something, most times in my experience, the thing that you're trying to avoid is the thing that you need to face. Whether it's something that you need to eradicate because it's negative, or if it's something you need to face because it's positive and you need to do it because it's going to benefit you. You got to do it. You got to face it. You got to go at it. Avoiding it and neglecting your life and your duties and your potential is the biggest disservice you can do, not only yourself but the people that count on you, and most likely that's your family. And so that stuff I'm real passionate about. If you don't already know, I'm a single dad. It's just me and my 8-year-old daughter Malia. We do a lot of things together, and I think a lot about her, and a lot of the things that I do are because of her. Obviously, I need to care about myself and be a little bit selfish, because if I'm no good, I'm no good to her. But primarily, when people ask me like, what keeps you motivated, which by the way, I've had that question to me multiple times, asked to me multiple times, it's her. I think about her future. I think about how she's going to think about me when I'm dead, or just how she thinks about me right now when someone, if someone's asked her a question like, what's your dad like? I want it to be nothing but positivity. I want to have a positive impact on her. Not only that, I want it to not just a positive impact, but just to have an impact on her. There's some parents that just don't have an impact on their kids just in general. And so I think it's important for parents to have an impact, but more importantly, have a positive impact on their children. But that's why I do it. I'm kind of going on a tangent right now, but this is why I do this stuff. This is, I would say that a lot of people, if you watch this and you say, oh fuck, Ben's talking about self-improvement again, like when you check out and you go on to watching Netflix, or you go on to Facebook, scrolling the feeds on Facebook and Instagram, or you start YouTube surfing, or you start wasting time. Let's put it that way. If you think that talking about self-improvement is a waste of time, chances are most likely you are wasting time. If you think what I'm talking about is a waste of time, you're probably wasting time. And so just a food for thought there. Matter of fact, that's so good that I gotta write that down, because bear with me, I need to write this down. Okay. Sorry, when I get that, there's no way I'll remember that, so gotta jot it down. That could be a good, not only a good quote, but it could be good merch material, right? The shirts that we made for this podcast and for mine and Malia's podcast on the Dynamic Duo podcast, I like putting quotes on the back of the shirt with things that we say during an episode. And so that's why I write things like that down. I guess I could always go back and watch it too, but all right, so let's get into this. So let's talk about these are some of the things. I got a list of like 7 things to talk about when it comes to the contagious combo section. The first thing on the list is reaching out for friends and connections. Some of these I had on the list for last podcast episode. We didn't actually get to it, but I'm kind of rolling it over into this podcast. So let's talk a little bit about this. Reaching up for friends and connections. What does that mean? So I'm gonna let you know what that means to me. Reaching up for friends and connections is something you should do if you want to better your life. In order to better your life, you need contacts. You need people. You need new contacts. You need to constantly be talking to new people that might actually have the direction that you want to go, might actually have something that you seek, whether it's knowledge or something tangible. And you shouldn't reach sideways. You shouldn't reach to your closest network all the time. A lot of people are looking for friends in close places. You should be seeking, especially with social media these days, it's so easy to reach out to people who have so much success or have, just have a lot going on, have done a lot, have a good mindset. You should be reaching up to people, whether it's just contacts or if you're looking for a mentor. You should definitely always reach up. These are the type of people that are going to help you. In order to get help improving yourself, whatever it is, finances, mindset, business, there's people out there that have the answers, or at least some good suggestions. And those people you got to reach up for. So those are, and again, if this bores you, then chances are you probably don't have any solid connections. So not to seem like harsh or anything, but that's just the reality. And so I really try to reach up. That's the whole reason why I reached up. And I've put about $40,000 into my training, into seeking a mentor, into holding myself accountable, doing the things I need to, into signing up for the licensing program, doing all of these types of things that provide a lot of value to me, and in turn are going to help me contribute to people that want the help, that want some guidance, that wanted to maybe just hear the things that I've done to maybe have impacted my life and my business. And so very imperative to reach up for the friends and connections. I do that every day, to be honest. A couple examples of that is me setting up podcast interviews to have guests on. The type of guests that I have on are high performance people. They're high performers. They've done something. They have some type of successes in their life, or they're doing something actively in their life right now that constantly excels them upward. Not sideways, upwards. They're productive, not busy, but productive. Remember, there's a difference between that. I talked about that a couple episodes back. So that's an example of reaching up. Me seeking out a mentor. That's reaching up. Just today, here's a small example of that. So where I go and get my suits tailored at, I picked up a couple pants today and was talking to the lady that works there. She's always she's very friendly with me. Super cute too, by the way. And she's always friendly with me, and she tells me, she heard me talking to the owner about my business, his business. We're doing business talk, and she kind of overhears us, and then she's been talking to me like, I should put you in contact with my daughter's boyfriend. He does a lot of real estate, he does a lot of house flipping, he does a lot of commercial buildings, he travels and does a lot of deals. And when I hear that and she says that, immediately I'm like, yeah, that's fantastic. I would love to be in contact with this individual. Could be something there. It could be, it's just about connecting. There might not be anything there at all. We might not have anything in common. Not only that, we might not have anything to offer each other. That's not the point. The point is constantly getting the feelers out there and always connecting with somebody. That's how relationships are formed. And so, seen her again today and told her I brought it up again. I was like, yeah, I'm going to give you my card this time. I know I kind of directed you to look at my website and look at our business work, but you see what I'm doing here? I'm constantly pushing to try to get this contact. And so today I gave her a card, and I didn't give her a card, but I will go back and give her a card. So the reason why I didn't was because the owner said to come back he was gonna call me in half an hour, as soon as he gets caught up. but he didn't get caught up. So anyways, I will go back, give her a card. The point is I'm constantly driving. This, when I go back, that'll be the third time now that I've asked to contact this individual that she brought up to me. Just part of networking, right? You know, if I have something that I can help him with, or he has something he can help me with, that's a relationship that could be formed, and that's a part of reaching up. You know, I'm interested in connecting with big players. I'm interested in connecting with people who are doing big things, who are focused on self-improvement, who are focused on financial improvement. You know, just I love that, and so that's part of what. That's another example of me talking about reaching up for friends and connections. So people should be doing that all the time. I think we get too comfortable. I've done this in my life quite a bit. You get too comfy with the same job that you work at. You go home, you watch Netflix, you hang out with a few friends, you have the occasional barbecue with the same friends, same family, same group. You don't really connect with anybody new. It turns out to be this boring ass mundane repetition in your life. And in order to have interest, you know, have these interesting things, in order to excel, there's just so much more. There's so many benefits to reaching out, making connections with people who are doing a lot, who are actually high performance, focused, and doing big things. You know, whether it's them you know, running a business, or having an entrepreneurial mindset, or, you know, writing a book, or whatever. Those are the type of people you should probably be hanging out with. Those are the type of people I want to hang out with, and those are the type of connections I want to make. I think it's super valuable for people to think about that a little bit more. Like, what are you doing in your life? You know, when opportunities present itself like that, where you could potentially meet somebody. Here's another example. Sitting in the Home Depot parking lot today. So I did it twice today, actually. I seen a contractor pull up next to me who does plastering and sheetrock and all that. So he gets out of the truck, and I was like, "Hey, excuse me, you got a card?" And he's like, "Yeah, I got a card." I was like, "Let me give you my card too as well." And we started talking a little bit about our businesses, got to know each other just a little bit, went our separate ways. Now we made that contact. Not, you know, there may not ever be anything that comes of that, but the whole point is I'm reaching out, right? Maybe there's something that he could benefit from me, and vice versa. You'll never know unless you actually make that connection. The most important thing is that I got the attention. All right, he knows my business, he knows what I do. So even if we never do anything, he may refer me. I may be the first person that comes on his mind when he needs a sunroom, a patio cover, or anything like that we do specific to our home improvement outdoor living company. You know, and that's part of networking too, is getting known, getting the attention, being on someone's mind, and vice versa, having someone on your mind when you may in fact need them as well. So there's just some huge benefits to networking and connections. Such an underrated thing to do in your life. I think, like I said, people are just way too comfortable. They get burnt out on work maybe, and all they want to do is relax and check out of life, when they should be looking for moments to network. It's so easy, especially, you know, yes, I did it twice today in real life with one-on-one connections, but it is very easy to do online too. That's how I was able to set up those podcasts. You know, I set up all three of those podcast interviews, or I should say 4. The 3 that I'm going to have guests on my podcast, I set that up online, and I also set up my guest appearance on another person's podcast episode online as well. Never met the guy. Don't even know him. He just asked, you know, in a group chat, where's all the entrepreneurs at? I responded to it, and then we chatted a little bit, and he said he had a podcast. I said I had a podcast, and then he mentioned something about me coming on. So absolutely, let's do this. And so, yeah, just looking for ways, just getting out there, meeting people. And that's why I went to Miami in March, made a ton of connections. Some of them might not become anything, but that's not the point. And by the way, when you're talking about friends and connections, usually those don't come to fruition as value immediately. So it could be a long-term delayed gratification type thing, meaning, you know, if it's a service that you provide and you introduce, you know, you make that connection, fast forward 5 years down the road, you're still doing this service, that person still knows, you know, like, hey, I know somebody who does that, he's been doing it for years, I'm gonna, you know, he's gonna be the first person I go to. So being consistent and consistently connecting with people is important, because like I said, you never know when you're going to be called upon, and getting attention is very important. So I could talk a lot about reaching out for friends, reaching out for connections, and, you know, those types of things. So I think you get the point. Let me I gotta take a drink here. My mouth is so dry. I don't know how these people do these long podcasts without drinking, without, you know, obviously not alcohol, but just anything to keep the throat dry, or moist rather. All right, thanks for that, for your patience. But yeah, I don't even know how these people do that, because every 2-hour podcast I do, my throat is dry. All right, let's get on to the next topic here. So let's talk about executing and avoiding distractions. I love this topic. I love talking about this. So how important is executing? How important is decision making? How, you know, is it important, you know, to avoiding distractions? How important is that topic? How do you avoid distractions? You know, what is a distraction? How do you identify a distraction? Let's start with executing. So when you try to execute something and you're, you know, executing, the definition of executing is probably, you know, making something happen immediately. Obviously it means other things like beheading somebody and killing somebody and things of that nature. But and that could be relevant too, like executing, you know, in a euphemistic form, you know, killing it. You know, I'm killing it right now. If you say that, that could also be interpreted as I'm executing it right now. You know, I'm getting things done, and you know, we use that term quite a bit too. It's kind of one of those modern terms, I guess. But executing is really important. Executing is one of the things that has gotten me out of despairing moments, discouraged times in my life, not knowing what to do. When I didn't know what to do, just doing something has gotten me out of a situation or got me some direction, has really provided a lot of value to my life. Just simply taking action. A lot of us get hung up with the analytics of something, the nuts and bolts of something. We are risk overt, meaning we don't like to take risk. We're afraid of failure. There's a lot of reasons why we don't execute, and it's for that very reason that people are stuck, why they are living paycheck to paycheck, why they aren't doing that thing that they always wanted to do, you know. And again, I could relate to this topic so much. I lacked execution so much the last 30, I'm 38 now, but for about 36 years of my life, probably before that. So when I was 35, that's when I quit, excuse me, was it when I was 35? It's 2015, it's 2021 right now. So I was 32, I'm sorry. So I was 32. That's when I really started to dabble with execution. You've heard me talk a lot about this, but I worked 10 years at one home improvement business, right? And that was the first big execution that I've ever done. And what I did was I quit the job and started a business with a business partner for, you know, and obviously you've heard me talk a lot about this, where it didn't last. That business and that partnership failed horribly, and I had to start over. I went back to zero, didn't know what to do. What I didn't do was go back to work for somebody. So that was one nice thing that, that was one real nice thing that I didn't do. It was the smartest thing I did after the first smartest thing, which is quit my job. But that was the first execution. I started dabbling. The reason I'm bringing that up is because I started dabbling with executing and taking some massive action. That was it. The first big massive action that I took that I can think of right now was me quitting my job that I worked at for 10 years. That's tough to do. I wasn't getting paid a ton of money, but I was getting paid a decent amount, enough to pay the bills and have a little bit left over. And, it wasn't satisfying. And so but it was hard because I was brought up to think about security, balance in my life, be happy with what you got, be loyal to a company, work 30 years for one company, thinking, I have no idea what the thought process is behind that to this day. But that was something that was a mindset that I adopted from people, from my parents. They worked, and I respect my mom, you know what I mean? But she did work for one company for, I think, 25 plus years. Ultimately, that company kind of, ended up betraying her in the end. And so, if something was executed using her life as an example, and by the way, I love you, Mom, if you're listening to this episode, but I feel like if she would have taken a little more action on her own destiny, she wouldn't have been subjected to that. You know what I mean? Like, you can't rely on working for somebody the whole time, building someone else's dream forever. But the reason I'm bringing that up is because that was a tough decision to make, a tough execution decision, a tough massive action decision for me to make, because I was secure, I was being average, I was getting by, I was able to pay the bills, no problem. I was in a leadership position, I was the lead of the company because I had seniority and I had a lot of skills. So it was hard to leave that. But it was the best decision I made, and it was when I started dabbling with executing and taking some massive action, doing some things that are out of my comfort zone. So it just kept going from there. I would take massive action in the 2-year business that I did with the business partner. And then when that failed, it's back to decision making time. What do? I got to make this execution. I got to make this tough decision. I got to make some sacrifices. So execution is a lot harder than talking about, and I think that's a lot of times why people don't do anything. They get real complacent, they get comfortable, and they look for the balance. They're talking themselves, just like I did, trying to make sense of why I settled, why I'm not looking to reach my full potential, why I'm not asking myself more questions as far as like, why am I doing this still? What can I do what more can I do with my life? Is this what my life's going to look like until I'm old? Those type of hard questions. I think it's good to ask yourself these hard questions that I never used to ask myself that before. And I still didn't when I started making those hard decisions. When I did quit that 10-year job and started building businesses, that 2-year business that failed, that was a time of discouragement for me. I just quit a job that I worked at for 10 years. Went and started my own business for 2 years. That failed. Next thing you know, I'm back to zero. Now what? Now I got to figure out if I tuck my tail in and run back to a previous employer, or look for similar work with a different employer and fall back in line. Do I fall back in line, or do I look to create something new now? What's the next chapter? Do I look for another chapter that's going up, or do I go sideways and fit in again and be happy with what I got? So those are tough decisions. That was where I was presented with yet another defining moment in my life, where I had to decide if I was going to execute something, if I was going to actually take some massive action and do something with my life, or retreat. And so I value taking action, executing. I think it's, and that's why I have a lot to talk about it, because I think there's just so much value in talking about it. And I think, a lot of people think that way. If I thought that way and I was taught that way, even if it was directly or indirectly, subconsciously, to have balance in my life, to have a job for 30 years, just get a decent pay, get benefits, get stable, look for that security. If I thought that way for 32 years, 32 to 35 years, and most people, 76% of people live paycheck to paycheck in the United States, the chances are that those people are not thinking about executing. It's just not on their mind. Taking massive action, not even a topic on their mind at all. And so that's why I talk about these things, is because maybe just hearing it and hearing me kind of just riff about these things and talk about my life and using that as an example of how, I got out of, being an employee to being an employer. Those type of things will get people thinking and start provoking some thoughts and start getting some inception going. And I think it's valuable. And maybe some people aren't cut out to be a business person. Maybe some people aren't cut out to create their own brand, their own product, their own service. But I think there's a high percentage that should be doing that have the potential to do that. They've just been conditioned to think the opposite way, in which the way I was talking about, and that's being comfortable and looking for security rather than looking for opportunities to create something within yourself and have an entrepreneurial mindset. So let's talk about avoiding distractions. So, what can a distraction look like? Let me just throw some examples out there. Social media, obviously, Netflix, children, your own children. And just because I say this doesn't mean there needs to be a negative connotation on that. Children could be distracting. Yes, you need to provide your attention to them as well, and you need to allocate time for your family, and obviously create time to spend with your family. But they can be a distraction. They're also a liability. It's funny when I talk to people about this, because they think, the first person I heard talk about this was Robert Kiyosaki when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad years ago, when he said kids are a liability. When I wrote out a list of liabilities and assets side by side, I thought it was almost mean to put my daughter as a liability under the liability section. But that's just the truth, But that's a whole nother topic. We can talk about that later on. It's not a negative topic. It's not something to be viewed as negative. It's something to be acknowledged, and where you're going to put your time, what's important, and just not only that, just acknowledging it. It could just be nothing more than that, than just acknowledging that. What are your assets in your life? What's putting money in your pocket? What are your liabilities in your life? What's taking money out of your pocket? That, just acknowledging those two things in your life, doing a quick inventory of that, is going to give you a clear indication of what you should be focused on. And anyways, that's kind of diverting into a different topic, but back to distractions. So you got things like Netflix, things like social media, things like children. What else could be a distraction? I guess those are a few good examples, and to be honest, those three examples are probably top 3, top 5 on the list of everybody's common distractions. When I do work in the office here, that's why I have a separate room to do work in. It's because it's really hard for me to focus. And I'm a single dad, so I spend a lot of time with me and Malia, just me and her. Whether it's us at the table and we're doing stuff. There's a time where I used to have the laptop downstairs and I try to work just because I wanted to be around her, help her out. But the fact of the matter is that she did distract me a little bit, and so when I need to focus on something, I let her know, like, sweetheart, I gotta go upstairs for an hour, I gotta go up there for a couple hours, I have to grind this out. If you need anything, come knock on the door, come get my attention. But it just helps me focus because I don't hear the TV going on in the background. I'm just in an office setting. You know, I got my artwork around me that helps me. You know, just reminders of motivation and my pursuit towards greatness and the things I want to achieve, and you know, the dreams I want to accomplish. So those are distractions. How do you avoid distractions? That's one way I avoid distractions. Now, this is just an example. So my daughter can be a distraction. And again, this is nothing negative. People can take this the wrong way or whatever. Like, the fact of the matter is, I need to work. I need to provide for my family. I need to provide a future for her. I can either be someone who works paycheck to paycheck and provide her the bare minimum, or I can sacrifice some of my time with her now and put in that time and grind and build something that's going to provide her more options, more financial support. You know, my daughter's got it pretty good. I mean, there's not much that, there's never a time, you know, the way she's growing up is much different than the way I grew up. You know, when there was something I wanted, there's a high probability that I wasn't going to get it. And a lot of the times I was told it was because of lack of money. I don't ever want that to be a reason why I don't get her something she wants. You know what I mean? Now, that doesn't mean I spoil her and give her everything she wants. Okay? If you, I don't know if any of you watch our podcast that me and her do. It's called Dynamic Duo Podcast. But right now she's doing an assignment. One of the assignments, it's my assignment that I gave her. She wants an iPad. She wants an iPad because she wants to be able to do Procreate on it, which is a digital art platform that you can sit there and do some really cool stuff on it, which I have on my iPad. But the problem is, I don't want her using my iPad all the time. I still let her use it sometimes, but I use it quite a bit. I use it for work. I don't want her to drop it. It's just an expensive piece of equipment. But I flat out told her, you know, I said, if you want this iPad, you're going to have to pitch me. You're going to have to sell me. It's going to be your assignment is write down a list of a lot of reasons why I should get this for you. And so I turned this into a little assignment. I want her to build on sales skills, pitching skills, attention skills, negotiating skills. And I turned that into an assignment. So the reason why I say that is because I'm not just giving her everything she wants, but she knows that I will get her anything she wants or needs, as long as she puts in a little bit of effort. So, but that's an example. Back to what I was talking about with distractions. That's an example of how I will avoid a distraction. If she's going to distract me, I'll come up in the office, take care of what I need to do. You can turn your phone off. You know, some people do that. I do that sometimes. I'll turn my volume off, the notifications off. That way I don't even hear my phone. That's one way to avoid distractions. Putting yourself in a secluded area with just, carving out the certain amount of time that you need to finish the task that's at hand. That's one way to avoid distractions. Another way is you can simply tell people too, like, hey, I'm going to be doing this in this time frame, just letting you know because I can't have any distractions. That's one way to avoid distractions. So there's ways to do that. And they could be polite too. There's real nice ways to do it. There's real, logical ways to do it. Those are some of the ways I do it. But I think it's very important that if you are thinking about executing things, making some hard decisions, making some sacrifices, taking massive action, chances are it could also involve you avoiding a distraction or neutralizing a distraction. And so a lot of times, more times than not, those kind of go hand in hand. So just something to think about. If a person's looking to execute on some things, you should probably practice avoiding distractions. Or what are you going to do to execute? How are you going to execute it? Because a lot of times people make that excuse that the reason they never executed anything is because they are distracted. So remove that excuse, neutralize and control that distraction, free yourself up, concentrate, focus. I mean, I'm talking hyper focused, laser focused. Like, If you want to actually make some big changes, it's going to take some real high energy focusing on that thing, and it's going to take some consistency too. Not like you do it for 2 hours one day and hope you're going to get some results type thing. If you guys know anything about me and what I've learned and what Grant Cardone's talked about, when the 10X movement is about, if you heard me talk about 10X is about massive action. It's about doing 10 times the amount of effort into whatever it is you want to get results out of. Because you usually don't hit 100% of what you put massive action into anyway. Okay? So you need to overachieve, over-deliver. That way you at least get a good percentage of that accomplished, and you feel successful, you feel accomplished, you feel like you've actually done something, and you actually have been productive, not just busy but productive. So but anyways, that's a little bit of insight into kind of my experience and my interpretation of executing and avoiding distractions. All right, so hopefully that's helpful. I gotta take another quick drink here. My throat is super dry. All right. Okay. I better start working through these, otherwise I'm gonna run out of time again. I definitely want to get into my 10X review with Don Peebles. He's the individual that I'm going to be talking about, talking about my notes that I took on his interview with Grant Cardone. Really liked that guy. I got a ton of value from his speech and his insight into his world and his experience. So let's talk about the next thing. This is one of Grant Cardone's famous quotes. And he says, "Success is your duty." I don't know if you've ever heard this before. I never heard anybody talk like this until I heard him say it in the 10X rule book, which I don't have here. I used to have it up here. It's all downstairs now. That really hit me hard, actually. When I heard him say that, I couldn't get it out of my mind. I was like, what the hell is he talking about? Success is my duty. It totally makes sense. What he's saying is success should not be viewed as a choice. It needs to be looked at as an obligation, because it is an obligation and it is your duty. You owe it to yourself. You owe it to your family to be the best you can be at something and create the most that you can. So when I hear statistics like 76% of people live paycheck to paycheck, that doesn't tell me that the term success is your duty has even ever been a thought in their mind, or their version of success is your duty is interpreted a little bit different. But to me personally, when I heard that hit me hard, and that got me thinking in ways I've never thought before. So, I guess the way I did interpret it was, success is my duty. It totally is up to me. It's just like, it's kind of like, I guess an example of that would be, why people carry guns, why people concealed carry a pistol or something like that. I used to hate guns, by the way, and I used to hate the thought of somebody carrying a gun. But recently, in the last few months, becoming a new gun owner, the whole reason was because of the mindset and without talking too much on this topic. The reason why I was bringing that up is because it's just an example of, depending on yourself to create success. The reason why I'm okay with carrying a gun now, and I'm okay with being a gun owner, coming from someone who absolutely hated guns and was terrified of guns, is because I know it's my responsibility. It is my responsibility. I am the first responder to an incident that's going to happen to me in my life. When shit goes down, it goes down quick. And the cop, I don't care how fast cops are, there's no cop that's fast enough that's going to make it in time to prevent whatever's going down from happening. And so it just took a lot of, again, I didn't think that way until I started listening to an individual who had that thought process, and that person's John Correa from Active Self-Protection. So Very solid individual. He talks a lot about gun safety and all those things. But anyways, the reason why I'm talking about that is because that's an example of how I've taken that control, put the control in my hands a little bit, because it should be. You know what I mean? Like, you can't rely on things to just happen. You can't rely all the time on people. You can create an environment where you'll have reliable people, but you need to have a lot of those reliable people, because chances are there's some of those people within that group of reliable people that are not going to be so reliable, and they're gonna come up short. They're going to disappoint you, and you want to have a backlog, and you want to have a person there to pick up the slack, step in when that person falls out. So those are just some examples of making success my obligation. No one's going to do it for me. No one is going to do it for me. Having the thought process of hoping something is going to happen is a very shitty mindset. It's a very unproductive mindset, and it's kind of a discouraging mindset, because you never know. You're just hoping. You're just hoping something's going to happen. You're not doing anything to create the chances of something happening. And it really is discouraging. And I don't like that thought process at all. So I want to create I want to create an environment in my life to where the chances of me being successful, whatever it is I'm trying to accomplish, to be high. I want those chances to be high. And so in order for that to happen, I need to take accountability for the fact that success is my duty, like he explained to me. So like I said, it really impacted me in such a good way. I never thought of it that way. I never thought about how success was a choice for somebody, where when I think about it now, when I think about really successful people or high performers that are doing well in their life or have done well in their life, they made that their obligation. It was never a choice for them. They made the decision. That goes back to execution. They executed, they took some massive action, and they kept going. It wasn't they aren't one-timers. Obviously there's a small percentage of one-timers, but the majority of successful people are some of the hardest working, hustlers and grinders, high performers are out there. And that's something I learned after being surrounded by these people and learning from these people. It's just something that I didn't realize until I started getting into that part of the world and into that atmosphere and that environment. And they are people that just don't quit, and they just keep going uphill. They look for their problem solvers. They got a can-do attitude. Some of those qualities I've already had too, but I just kind of suppressed them a little bit or didn't exploit them. And even my problem solving skills and my determination skills and my outperforming skills that I utilize in an average setting, working paycheck to paycheck in my previous years of my life, those could have been exploited and leaned into and been emphasized dramatically. I would have seen a lot more results, kind of like the results I'm seeing in my life now. So yeah, success is your duty. One of those things that needs to be thought about. It is your duty. It is your obligation. It needs to be looked at as an obligation and not a choice. You don't have a choice. Either you want to, be mediocre and slowly deteriorate and slowly go backwards, or you're going to make that commitment to be successful and work at it all day, every day, and you're going to make those tough decisions to help with that decision or that commitment that you have made, rather. So remember, I talked about this a few episodes back. I can't remember who I learned this from, but you're never just you're never staying in one place. If you've made the decision that you're comfortable or that you're satisfied or that you're secure, you're not. You are moving backwards. You're either going backwards or you're going forward. You're never staying still. And that's a thought process and a realization that I've had that has also been on the forefront of my mind and has helped me dramatically. And this is just another little nugget to keep real relevant to my mind, to keep me grinding on my pursuit of improvement. So Yeah, so just remember I said that. If anybody ever hears that, if you've never heard it before, let me know your thoughts in the comments, or even if you watch this on your own time later on, let me know your thoughts on what success is your duty means to you, or if that's even important to you, or if that's, you know, something you never thought of, you don't think there's any value to that. There is value to that. I am curious to know if that impacted anybody, just hearing that, if that impacted anybody as much as it impacted me, because I'm telling you, there's one-liners and things like that I hear that stick. They stick with me, and they just fester, and they just plant a seed in my mind that gets me thinking a lot about my life, what I should be doing and what I've done, what I need. Yeah, I mean, it's just good stuff, all good stuff. So let's see here. So I would say, I guess I'll get into a couple more of these before I get into the 10x review. So, all right, so next thing, two biggest excuses. The two biggest excuses that people make is that they don't have time and they don't have money. These are the two most common excuses that people make in almost every scenario that they come up short on. They'll bring up time or they'll bring up money. And it's totally true. I've done this myself. It's embarrassing to think that I've done this as well in the past. And then I'll even catch myself doing it occasionally here or there, you know what I mean? But now it's different. Now I have a sense of accountability. So if I do catch myself talking like that, I'm like, don't be talking that way, man. Like, I'm going to hold myself accountable. The reason this is happening is because of this. So let's go back to this. Two biggest excuses that people don't have time or they don't have money. People say that, right? Now, here's an interesting thought. The reason you don't have time or money is because you have not invested time or money, right? Such a crazy, such a interesting thought, such an interesting statement, rather. It makes so much sense, though. When you think about that, in order to gain time, you have to invest time. In order to gain money, a lot of times you got to invest money. Now, this can intermix too. In order to gain time, you have to invest money. In order to gain money, you have to invest time. Either or, you need to be investing one of the two to get either one of those things. And the reason why you don't have it is because you haven't invested any of it. And that's the reason why I never had any of it, is because I never invested any of it. So it's such a crazy concept, but it's so true. I believe it to be true. I'm just thinking about all the times that I might have used those excuses and how I didn't invest my time or money, how I could have invested my time or money like I do now. Those things, it's such a game changer. It is such a game changer. And just acknowledging that and understanding that is going to get people to start doing that. You know, if you value time and money, and then you understand this concept and you see that, chances are you're probably going to have a switch flip, and you're going to think to yourself like, shit, how can I invest my time? Or how can I start investing my money? Whether it's a little bit here and there, whether it's a lot, whether it's, some kind of regular schedule, like how can I start doing this? Because that's the question you should be asking yourself. If that statement sounds important to somebody, you should probably ask yourself that question. Like, how can I start investing time? How can I start investing money? And by the way, there's a lot of ways you can invest time. There's a lot of ways you can invest money for you to gain that back as well. Now, some of this can come short term. Some of this, probably most of it, could be referred to the long term aspect of gaining time and money. You're probably going to have to invest a lot of time and a lot of money for a long-term residual of receiving more time and more money as well. And I think we could all understand that, even if we are a person who's living paycheck to paycheck and we're living a nice secure life, a nice average life, a nice little moderate life. I think even those people can understand that concept, whether or not they're actually, they believe it or they think that it should apply to them, I think they can agree that that's probably true. I used to think, negative thoughts when I seen successful people or someone with money. I would always, for lack of better words, talk shit. Things like, oh, well, his daddy bought him that car, or, well, someone probably set him up. He probably handed the business down to that person. Oh, well, they were raised better. I always would come up with an excuse as to why a person's doing better than me, when in reality, the reason why I wasn't doing as good as them was because I didn't invest any time, I didn't invest any money into myself. That's where it is. Like, the biggest investment needs to be in yourself. I talked about this last podcast. The biggest ROI, the only guaranteed return on investment that you're ever going to get is the one you make on yourself. Whether it's an investment of time or an investment of money, you're guaranteed to get that return back, because nobody can take it from you, particularly knowledge. You invest money, let's use this as an example. If you invest time and money into receiving skills and knowledge, like from a mentor or something of that nature, or just some programs, anything, no one can take that from you. That's something you're going to keep, unless you have dementia or you just have bad memory. That's something you're always going to have the rest of your life. These are things that someone cannot take from you, and that's why it's so valuable, because now you're just adding to this tool belt. You're adding to the arsenal of skills that you have, and the skills are retained in the mind. The mind cannot be taken from you. Obviously, if you get hit in the head with a hammer or something, like, what I'm saying, like, for the people that are reaching for examples like that, you know what I'm saying. In general, if you live a nice life where you don't have the chances of something random like that happening, it can't be taken from you. Knowledge can't be taken from you. So it's just very important to acknowledge that as well. There's so much value in just acknowledging that. First of all, we make excuses that we don't have time and money. So acknowledge that first. The next thing we need to entertain is the idea, like, hey, the reason I don't have time or money is perhaps because I don't invest time or money in myself, and so that was something, I've kind of already known that a little bit in the last couple years. I didn't know that prior to that at all, but just hearing it still gives me perspective on it and makes me almost look for ways to think about it differently. I'm very aware that I need to start investing in time. That's why I keep talking about how I spent $40,000 and will be spending more into my training and into my mentorship programs. And, I'm very aware of that, but still hearing that, it gives me a different perspective. It kind of, I don't know, it just gets me looking at things even more differently. Even if I already had this concept in my head, just hearing it and looking at it on paper, it reintroduces it back into my mind again. It makes it fresh, and it's like, holy shit, it's totally true. And then I start using examples of my previous mindset, the previous life structure I had, and look at it now, and how implementing, and how acknowledging that, my biggest excuses was no time and no money, and how I can actually change that by using time and money. Just knowing that has been a game changer, and it just reintroducing it back into my mindset is valuable as well. And so, Grant likes to say anything worth learning once is always worth, if it's worth learning once, it's valuable and worth learning twice and hearing again for the second time. And so I totally agree, especially when you're just consuming content and you have a learning mindset, like you're in this point in your life where all you want to do is be a vacuum of knowledge. I think it's very important to isolate the things that really stuck out to you and the things you want to come back to and listen to it again. That's what I've been doing. Listen to the same thing that you were just taught again. Get it fresh on your mind. Repetition, it's just like practice. Practicing sports, practicing to study for an exam. It's the same thing. just practice, get that in your head. That way you're about it. You want to be about it. You don't want to just talk about it. There would be no value in me talking about these things if I hadn't done it myself, or if I'm not about it. When I'm about everything I talk about. All these things are things that I've implemented in my life, and the things that have actually helped me, and that's why I'm passionate about it. If it's helped me so much, I want to share it. It's just simply that. It's just that simple. And who better than to, a lot of this stuff I talk about, I pay for this stuff. For me to receive this type of knowledge is something I pay for. So if I'm giving it away for free and using my life as an example of how it actually impacted my life and has made it better financially, emotionally, and just in general, the quality of my life, it's valuable to me. It makes me feel good. I like to contribute. I like to help. Most people generally like to help people, and I'm no different. And so that's why I talk a lot about this stuff. But yeah, I think that's important. Keep that in mind. Reason why you don't have time, why you don't have money, why you're making excuses of why you don't have time and money, it's because you have not invested any time or money into yourself. So think about that. Think about, if that's a possibility that could be applied to your life, and maybe that's why you don't have time and you don't have money. Think about how you can do it. Where can you invest some time and money into? Start with that. See if there's room for improvement to implement that skill. All right. So good stuff, man. These topics are killing it right now. Those little bullet points, like I said, that stuff, it excites me to hear that stuff, and then it excites me to even talk about it. That's another value I get. The fact that I'm talking about these things just keeps it relevant. It's just that practice mindset I'm talking about. Just keeping it, just repeating these things over and over to where I'm creating this internal dialogue of the person I want to be, the person I am, the person that I need to be in order to gain some, to change, positively change, not just myself, but my life. So, all right, good stuff. Let's talk a little bit about, let's see, should I get into that? Yeah, let's get into let me go into the 10X review now. These other things that I had to talk about in the contagious combo, I'm gonna have to recycle into next podcast. So let me go ahead and make a notation here, because I want to make sure. There was a lot of notes I took on Don Peebles, and I want to talk about it. Some of them might not be relative. I mean, let's just talk about it. I don't want to sit here and cast any assumptions anyway. So Don Peebles, this guy, he's one of the guests that stood out to me quite a bit at the 10X Growth Conference. And in case you're wondering what I'm talking about, the review section, I've been continuing the review of my 10X Growth Conference experience that I went to in March, where it's a massive business conference that they have every year. It's the biggest one on the planet. They have guest speakers that come, high performance, very wealthy individuals, very knowledgeable individuals. And so this is me just kind of, I took notes on a lot of these people that were there. And so I'm continuing my, I guess talking about the notes that I took and kind of getting some thoughts and really just sharing my experience. All right, let's get into it. So Don Peebles is basically the founder of Peebles Corporation, which is a real estate company. So he's big into real estate, and from what I remember, he got into it, and he might even still specialize in government real estate, so government funded properties and commercial buildings. So we're probably talking about massive projects, especially if it's government funded. The capital that's being applied to government funding for projects that size is probably quite a bit. So he talked a lot about, I'm just gonna go down the bullet points. One of the bullet points he said was, your money can work harder than you can. It doesn't get sick or make excuses. I thought that was pretty good advice. This is great business advice too, but honestly, this can be applied to your life too. That's almost it's almost relative to really the no time, no money conversation we just had about, the reason you don't have that is because you refuse to invest both of them. Your money can work harder than you can. It doesn't get sick or make excuses. So yeah, if you invest your money in something to work for you, that's a good point. It doesn't stop. That's why a lot of real estate investors or anybody who gets involved in real estate, whether they're the owner or the investor, that's why they like it. It's because it's just a well-oiled machine that doesn't stop. Whether there's, granted, this last year and this year a little bit, the pandemic and the COVID-19 affected the real estate industry in a way that we've never seen before, right? They, especially specifically talking about the eviction moratorium, right? And if you don't remember what that is, that basically was some kind of bill that was passed that made it to where landlords couldn't evict tenants. And if I remember right, what it did was it basically just rolled over those due rental payments. So basically, if you went 3 months without paying and really leaned on the moratorium, they were going to hit you with, you had to pay that eventually after the moratorium was lifted. So me personally, I didn't see any benefit in that. If you owe something, you're better off paying it. The sooner the better, not stacking up a bill of debt, consumer debt, that is. Not saying, consumer debt and business debt are completely different. So we can talk about that another time, but just talking about consumer debt. So yeah, your money can work harder than you can. It doesn't get sick or make excuses. Very good stuff. Another thing he said is, it's okay to be old. It's okay to be broke. You don't want to be both at the same time. I thought that was really good advice. Obviously, it's kind of funny, but there is some truth to that. That's scary too to think about. I don't want to be old, and I certainly don't want to be broke. Chances are you already know one of them's going to happen. You're going to be old at one point or another, right? The one you have control over is being broke. That's up to you. So if he's saying it's okay to be old, it's okay to be broke, but you don't want to be both at the same time, you only have one variable that you can control, and that's your income and your finances, so that you're not broke when you are old. That should tell you that you need to get working on your finances. You need to get working on your long-term financial plan. And so I think it's valuable. That's just a valuable little one-liner there. So according to him, he said the two most valuable commodities is time and the relationships we build. So time is definitely, I've heard a lot of people make that same statement. Time is one of the most valuable assets you have, one of the most valuable commodities that is around. Being able to create time, that is one of the topics that I didn't get to. Unfortunately, we'll talk about this next podcast, but Grant Cardone talks a lot about, I would rather create time and not manage it. I don't want to manage time. I want to create the time. And so very impactful stuff, very thought-provoking statement there as well. But that's what he's talking about is, one of the most valuable commodities is time. And so you should control that, what your time looks like, where your time is being allocated. And the other thing is the relationships we build, like he said. Now, that was one of the first things we talked about in the Contagious Convo today, was reaching up for friends and connections. Same thing he's talking about. The relationships we build. Well, in order to create a relationship, you need to reach for friends and connections. preferably up. Like I said, you don't want to look for people in your close network. You don't want to reach for people who are being average. You don't want to reach for people that are just not performing. Reach up, build some valuable relationships with people that are actually big players, people actually doing something, people have big dreams, people have big goals, people who have high values, right? Those are the type of people you probably want to surround yourself with if you have this yearn to be better and to self-improve, and you're looking for something. You're looking for that. How can I excel and increase my full potential and do better in my life? I think that's important. Relationships are a big key factor to that. I realize that, and that's why I network all the time. And I gave you a couple examples of how I did that just today. The other thing is, this is a funny statement. So I've heard people say, God, who was this? I don't remember who the hell said it, but the statement was, eagles fly alone. And I've heard this statement said in many different forms. So his is kind of funny. So he said, you can't fly like an eagle hanging around turkeys. I think that's pretty funny. So what he's saying is, do an inventory of who you're hanging around with. Pay attention to who you're being influenced by, directly or indirectly. Friends, family, colleagues, those are, social media. Those are things that influence you, influence your internal dialogue, influence your self-talk. And that stuff is important, because what I said, when I talked about Brandon Dawson, either last episode or one before, I talked about his favorite saying, which is, what you think is what you act on. What you act on is what you become. What you become becomes your legacy. So it's very important to get that internal dialogue where you want it. You need to create this internal dialogue and build and work on this self-talk of yours, so that you're focused on what you need to be doing. So when you have that self-talk, you can check yourself. You can reality check yourself a lot more often and ask yourself the question, like, is this actually benefiting me? Is this serving my internal dialogue? Is this helping me get towards my goal? So very important stuff to think about. There's a lot of substance to that silly little saying, which is why it's funny, but there is a lot of value in that saying. You can't fly high like an eagle hanging around turkeys, right? There's a lot of viewpoints within that statement. So think about that one, because that was one that was introduced to me a while back too. Oh, this is exactly what I just said. Another thing he said is, if you're not happy with where you are now, you need to change the way you think. I think that's some of the most basic, valuable, simplistic advice you can give somebody. It's so fucking crazy how simple it is when you think about that. If you're not happy with where you are now, whether it's your job, whether it's the people you hang out with, whether it's your partner, that's your spouse, if you're not happy with anything like that, you need to change the way you think. It needs to start with your internal dialogue. It goes back to what I was just saying, and it just needs to start there. Your mindset needs to change. That's the first thing that I did when I started, after I quit that 10-year job and I just dove into this business that I didn't really know much about, and then I failed out of that. I slowly was changing. I didn't change my mindset, actually. I would hear these nice little cute sayings of from successful people, and I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. And then I would be on it for a little bit, and then I would forget it. And I wouldn't keep that internal dialogue in my mind. I would never change anything. I would never execute. I would never take any action. And it wasn't until I failed that second business that I fell back on my ass. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know how I was going to start. I didn't know what the next chapter of my life was going to look like for a second there. And so it was around that time I started really realizing that I needed to change my mindset. Like, it needed to start with my mind. The way I'm thinking is not helping me. And so once I acknowledged that, it was weird. Like, once you change the mindset, you put yourself in a position where you're comfortable taking some action. You get comfortable, you get confident, and then the execution part of it starts happening. The taking the massive action, realizing you need to make some sacrifices, and then in fact acting upon those sacrifices and actually executing those sacrifices. You need to get rid of something. In order to gain something, you're gonna have to get rid of something. Just understanding that and making all these things that we talked about, everything I talked about in the Contagious Combo today, making that part of my internal dialogue and a part of my self-talk and my mindset is where it started. I mean, there's no way in hell I was just going to start doing something if I didn't believe it. In order for you to believe something and be passionate about it and really truly think that it's going to have a positive impact and actually do you some good in your life, it needs to start with your mind. So I really love that statement. It's so simple. It's easy to digest. I mean, I'll say it one last time. If you're not happy with where you are now, you need to change your mindset. Just the way he says that. It's not even you might want to think about changing your mindset. You potentially need to change your mindset. It's direct. It's about as direct as you can get. If you're not happy with where you are, you need to change the way you think. The way you think. Very specific. He didn't even say mindset. He said the way you think. Your thought process needs to be changed. So I think it's so, I don't know. I love that. The other thing he said here is your family's advice most times can be the worst because they are afraid. This is crazy. I mean, dude's dropping some bombs right here. These are some nuggets right here. Family's advice, a lot of people probably already know that, but it's really the inception, the subconscious thoughts that are being put into your head by your friends and family that play a huge part. It's those little subconscious negative thoughts that play a huge part in your mindset. And we don't even realize it. And that was something that took me a while to realize, to come to terms with too. I'm like, oh shit, the people I surround myself with, the way they're talking, I gotta check, I identify that stuff because I still, I just don't, most people aren't surrounded with ton of high performance people, and it's just, even the most successful people, there's going to be some people in their life that just don't think like them, and that's just it. But how you react to that stuff and how you handle it and how you interpret it, whether or not you allow that to play a part on your own mindset and the way you think and your mindset development, that's the key difference right there. That's the game changer. So the family's advice, your family's advice most times can be the worst because they are afraid. What does he mean by that? They're afraid themselves. They're afraid for you. Specifically, they're afraid for themselves. Most people are risk overt. They're not going to be taking risks. That's why we have 76% of people living paycheck to paycheck. Those people are also afraid. Those people are also risk overt. They're not willing to take chances. They're not willing to gamble, and they're not. It's not even an edge. When I say gamble, I'm talking about like a smart gamble. There's a difference between gambling, like going to the casino and gambling, or buying a scratch ticket gambling. That type of gambling is a waste of time, in my opinion, because what you're doing is you're relying on hope. And you're instead of actually creating your own and being determined to create something yourself, you're relying on something to magically happen. All right, that's not the type of gambling I'm talking about. The type of gambling I'm talking about is something that you invest, like for instance, investing time or money. You're gonna have to invest time or money and gamble that it's gonna pay you back. Most times it is gonna pay you back though, but that is a gamble, and most people don't realize that. That's why they're afraid to do it. So going back to that, yeah, people are afraid, so don't let them project that fear on you, because that happens a lot. Fear, oh man, you've heard me talk a lot about fear. People love to project their fear on you. They'll love to give you their advice of why they don't do something, you know? And then in turn, if you don't pay attention, you're going to adopt that way of thinking as well. And you're going to also make sense of why you haven't done anything. You're like, oh yeah, I guess it's not smart to take that risk, you know? And you're trying to make sense of why you haven't done it. Next thing you know, 5 years goes by and you still haven't done anything. You haven't made any action. You haven't changed anything. And you're still living paycheck to paycheck. So don't let fear, I can talk a lot about fear, because fear was one of the things that I realized was holding me back from executing things and making some tough decisions. I allowed people to put their fear into me, whether it was their own fear in themselves being put into me, or someone literally trying to make me fearful, you know, in some form or another, like by deliberately threatening me with fear. As soon as I confronted fear, I didn't look back. Matter of fact, that's been one of the biggest game changers for me, is facing my fear. Literally. And what I mean by that is, as soon as something scared me, as soon as something just seemed uncomfortable and like I was afraid of it, I would go after it. I would do the exact opposite of it. I would do exactly what I wasn't used to doing. I would do the exact opposite, and I would lean into that fear. And oh my God, that's been the biggest thing that's been a game changer for me. I can think of so many different scenarios, how that's actually really taken my life in a direction of positivity. You know, things have happened. You know, that's how I was able to go from being an employee to an employer, because of fear. How fear. Ooh, I need to write that down, because I'm actually coming up with some stuff here. Okay. I had sorry, the reason I wrote that down, appreciate your patience on that. The reason I wrote that down is because I started writing a book. It's been a while now. It's been since last year since I've done any work on it. And that's the reason for that, is because I wasn't completely sold on what I wanted the book to be about. Recently, in the last month, I had a different idea of what I want my first book to be about. And I'm completely sold on it. It's something that I can relate to. I can use my life as an example. And it's something that I think is so valuable for people to hear. And talking about how fear played a role in my life is one of the topics I want to talk about in that book. So that's why I had to write it down. So I'm pretty excited about it, actually, because like I said, I didn't know what I wanted to talk about. And now I've really solidified what this book is going to be about. And now it's just a matter of me coming up with what the chapters are going to be about, and then formatting it in the order in which I think it should happen, typing it out, maybe just seeing how many words it's going to be. And then, it's one of my goals is to write a book. And so I can't wait to do that. I'm going to go back and basically scrap the notes I had on my other, well, that's not true, actually. Some of that stuff can actually be utilized in this book as well. But I just got a good idea for a book. Let's put it that way. Now, another thing he said is lessons aren't free. Lessons are not free. What does he mean by that? How can that, what does that mean to me? When I hear him say lessons are not free, he could be talking about, well, let me give you an example of how I'm interpreting that. So, again, I told you guys that I've paid thousands of dollars to receive the type of training that I've been receiving to help me grow my business and to help me live a better life in general, just to have a positive mindset. That I had to pay for. You can get some free stuff. Some lessons are free, but I think there's a deeper meaning to what he's saying there when he says lessons are not free. And I think it's relative to what Grant Cardone was talking about, or I heard him talking about. Well, no, yeah, he mentioned this in at the GrowthCon and back in March too. But what he said was, people who pay attention. And so this goes back to investing in yourself. Most times when people are learning something, and if it's free, the commitment level is not as high. And since we value money so much, this green paper, this little piece of paper, we value so much. If you invest some of that into yourself and you pay for something that you could have gotten when you were gotten for free, you're going to pay more attention to it because you value the money more and you're attached to it. And so unfortunately, a lot of us value what we pay for. And so, we value more than that, but we definitely value what we pay for. It's just a condition, it's just part of our conditioning that we've had. So that's how I interpreted that. Lessons aren't free. And what he probably means by that is the good lessons aren't free. The stuff that you're gonna put your attention on 100%, you're probably gonna need to pay for it. You should be willing to pay for it because it's gonna make you pay attention. Those who pay attention. And I agree with that. Because I've gotten free content and I pay for the content that I get now, and I study it every day. There's no free content that I studied every single day like I do now. So that's the difference. You'll probably pay for something for free. You'll be obsessed about it for a week. Forget about it. And it's not going to be on your mind as much. And if you pay for something that is a training course or of some sort, and also has a sense of accountability, an element of accountability to it, you're going to pay attention and you're going to get the most value out of that whole experience. You're going to get more value out of that experience than you ever will than just studying some free content. So that's my interpretation of lessons aren't free. I think that's probably what he meant by that, is the good lessons are not free. You have to pay for it because you're going to pay attention to it. And then in turn, those lessons are going to be super valuable. All right. Okay, he said, now he started talking a little bit about something different here. He was saying the venture capital and private equity, there's 70% less than 3% is invested in women or minorities. Not quite sure. He started talking a lot about real estate, started talking about the biases in politics when it comes to venture capital and how the rich have access to money and the poor people and the middle class. Is really hard for the middle class to have access to money and working capital and things like that. He talked about the majority of investors are the working class. Oh, this is interesting. The majority of investors are the working class, the middle class, but 98.7% of all capital goes to the top 1%. That's pretty messed up. This is what I like about that guy, because he understands those numbers. And not only that, he's creating a business that is trying to change that game. He wants access for that capital. He doesn't want the majority of the capital, working capital, to go to the 1% of people who are already wealthy and successful. He's trying to make it accessible to the middle class, to the people to the entrepreneurs that are thinking about building something more, those people that are getting out of the paycheck to paycheck rat race and wanting to improve their life. I like that about him. He's started a whole campaign on it, a website about it, and so he talked a lot about that. It's pretty fucked up for to be blunt, that the majority of investors are the middle class. You know what I mean? Meaning we're investing our dollars into the capital that's available, but the capital that is available, 98% of that is only available to the top 1% of people, and that's the rich. That's so messed up. That's just how that goes. So understanding that, though, it's good, because it's going to help anybody who's wanting to convert and transition from being an employee to an employer mindset. It's going to help you understanding that the game is not rigged to help you. You got an uphill battle, which means you need to grind, you need to work extra hard, you need to over deliver, and you need to really make some massive action, because the odds are stacked against you. All right, talked a lot about investing in cash producing properties. That could be said about anything, right? When he said your money will always work harder, what did he say? Your money can work harder than you can. It doesn't get sick or make excuses. That's what he means, is investing in cash producing properties, because it's always going to be working for you. It's always going to bring you that check, no matter what happens, no matter if it snows, no matter if there's a drought, no matter, aside from obviously this unforeseen pandemic that happened that hit the real estate market. It's going to always pay you. There's just a more of a guarantee there than earned income. It's just passive income rather than earned income. All right. He said, have a go against the herd mentality. And again, some more simple advice, very valuable advice. Don't always go with the grain. Don't always go with the majority of people. You should be questioning the majority of things. So if the majority of people are in agreement with something, you should question why. What's the opposite of that? Why isn't it this way? Why is it that way? Like, why is everybody so convicted with being in alignment? My personal opinion is the assumption that people just want to fit in. They want to be part of something. It's a lot easier to fit in with the herd than it is to be the black sheep and do your own thing. Think for yourself. It's a lot easier to think like someone else than it is to think for yourself. And so a lot of people just want to be accepted. They want to be a part of something. It's a tribal mentality. And so I think this is great advice. Just going against the herd mentality, how doing that is going to give you a sense of freedom, give you a sense of empowerment. It's going to personalize you. It's going to give you your own characteristics of, I'm going to do something. I'm going to try this. I don't care what anybody says. I'm not going to listen to the fear. I'm not going to go with the flow of things, and I absolutely love that. Here's another thing he said. So it's easy for the critics to attack the doer. It's harder to build something. Those who do. Those who don't write and talk about others. This is some of the, I love this. This is some of the greatest advice that someone could, he's dropping again some hard stuff here. I love that. It's easy for critics to attack the doer. Absolutely. It's easy to watch someone who's being successful, making moves, and even not successful. It's easier to watch someone who's making moves and failing and sit there with your arms crossed and go, yeah, I wouldn't have done that. Yeah, see, that's why I don't do it. Yeah, tried telling them. I knew that was going to happen. You see that negative talk? Like, that's just, it's so demotivating. And that person that's talking like that is trying to make sense of their own mediocre, low achieving life, low producing, average outcome in their own life. That type of talk is just someone trying to make sense of their own situation, right? and they will project that on you. So don't listen to it. There's tons of critics. The haters are there. The more haters you have, the better. And so it's harder to build something. So look for something to build. You're not going to build anything working for somebody the rest of your life. That's not to be confused with the amount of value you can get from working for somebody. I think working for somebody needs to happen for at least a good portion of your life. How much? I don't know. It's different for every person. But you do need to work for somebody. There shouldn't be, I'm not saying there should be a 17-year-old that wants to just build something, right out of high school or something. They need to get into the working class. They need to get into that middle class. They need to get into the basics of there's value in working for somebody is what I'm saying. There's not long-term value in working for somebody. You should look to build something. Get what you need from that experience, whether it's connections or skills. Typically, it's going to be those two things. Skills being the first one, probably. Get the skills you need. Get the connections you need, the network you need, and then go build something. Try it. Fail. And then try it again, and then fail and try it again, and then keep doing it. And then, have the critics just let their comments roll off your shoulder. Like, you need to be like Teflon. You need to have that shit just roll off your shoulder when the comments come, the negativity comes. Too much of us care what other people think. And although there is still going to be a slight element to that, to where you do care what people think about you, you shouldn't let it be so. You shouldn't let it determine what you're going to do. So you need to control that part of your brain too. Like, how can I not give a fuck what people think about me? Like, what are some of the things I can do right now to let it be known to myself that I don't care what people say to me, and also to project to people, like, I don't give a shit what you think about me. I'm doing this. You can project all your negativity all you want. All right. Most times when people are projecting negativity, it's a projection of their own insecurity and their own shortcomings. So something to keep in mind. But yeah, I love this. It's easy for the critics to attack the doer. It's harder to build something. And then ultimately, those who do it. Those who don't, they sit back, they write, and they talk shit about others. So keep that in mind. And if you're trying to be a high performance producer and you're trying to do something positive with your life, keep that in mind. It's going to help you keep your focus. So now what he did say was he's got a very interesting thought process. He was talking about the Black Lives Matter movement a little bit. Now, if you don't know who Don Peebles is, he's black. He said that to say that we're all equal is disingenuous. Now we're kind of getting into a different part of his thought process now. But I did think that was very interesting. And I don't quite remember how he explained that. I just wrote that down. To say that we're all equal is disingenuous. I think he's got a point, because what he's trying to say is that, and I think he even used an example of that, he's gonna, when he hires somebody, he's gonna hire the person that's going to do a better job, regardless of the color. If 100 people that are white apply for the same job and 100 black people apply for the same job, and obviously I'm using random numbers, and all the white people all appear to be better candidates and are going to do a better job at this, he's going to hire all the white people. Vice versa, if all the black people come across that, in the interview, that they're better candidates, they're going to do a better job, he's going to hire all the black people. He's not focused on color. He's not focused on equality. He's focused on the skills and the amount of effort put into it. I thought that was a very interesting point of view. Yeah, I agree on both sides. Should we all be equal? To a certain point. We should all have equal rights, obviously. But when it comes to performance-based things, you need to prove yourself. So I think that's what he's talking about, equality in a performance-based setting. It needs to go to the person that's more qualified. It needs to, the focus needs to be on the most ambitious person. You shouldn't seek diversity. You should seek productive, high performance, positive people who are actually going to supply results, produce results for you, not diversity. All right. Producing results should be higher on the priority list than equality and diversity. So I agree with him, and I like to, now if this guy was white talking about that, it'd be a little bit different, but the fact that he's actually black and he's saying that has a little more substance to it and a little more credibility to it, because for a black person to say that that his point of view on the Black Lives Matter movement was, and that we all should be created equal, is disingenuous. It kind of has an impact just hearing a black person say that. So it's kind of like Candace Owens. She talks a lot about that too. She's black. A lot of people don't agree with what she says. A lot of people might not agree with what he says regarding that. But regardless, it is thought-provoking. It is something to think about. Whether or not you agree with either subject, it's something to think about and look in, entertain the other person's idea. If I don't agree with somebody, I at least entertain their suggestion and their thought process and their mindset on when it comes to opinionated stuff like that and political stuff like that. I always want to entertain someone else's idea and understand them. Like, how did they come to that? Even if I still don't come into agreement, I am interested in trying to understand them. Like, how did they come to that? How did they talk themselves into that? I think it's fascinating. I like conversations like that. So what did he say? Even something, damn it, I misspelled that. Something, even blank the best people because they're better, regardless of their age, race, or gender. So what I was just talking about, basically emphasize it a little bit more. So anyways, if you're interested in what he's trying to do, he dropped a website. It's called fund@peoplescourt.com. I don't even remember what that's about. I think it's regarding what I talked about, where it's going to give middle class investors access to their own investment in working capital, rather than the whole 98.7% of it only being accessible to the 1% of the rich people. So I think that's pretty cool. Sounds like he's got some good things going on. He cares about the people. All right, so that burns up the whole. Anyways, super solid guy. I really appreciated him, his delivery and things. He's very nice. He's very straightforward, very logical individual. And I got a lot of value from that. You know what I mean? Like, he talked a lot. There's a lot there that I didn't write down because it was just a walking encyclopedia of information. And so very glad that I was able to share that with you, my experience and listen to that man speak. It was really cool. All right, so real quick here, let's talk about the I guess we'll skip over the viral viewpoint, unfortunately, because I burnt up the whole time, and we'll recycle it into next week's episode, which is basically going to be me talking about control and the importance of it. Is it important? Is it not important? Should it be? So we can talk about that next week on the viral viewpoint for that segment. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that because that's a topic that I value as well. All right, so real quick, let's get into a rant. This could be, I have a feeling I've already ranted about this, so let's call this rant part 2. And this is about people, I might have not actually talked about this. So you heard me complain about how when I put an ad out for people to apply to a job posting that I put out, right? They don't answer their phone. So that's annoying. I already talked about that, how annoying that is. Super fucking frustrating to have somebody apply to a job, leave a number, you call it, they don't answer, or worse, they'll text you after they don't answer. Oh my God, so unprofessional. So what's even worse than that, believe it or not, is when they set up an appointment for an interview, and yes, believe it or not, they do not show up. It's happened to me twice now. And so I'm going to start approaching my interviews. Matter of fact, I'm going to start approaching everybody the way my pitch deck is for a sales presentation. What I mean by that is when I set up an appointment for somebody, I ask them a simple question. So I'll set it for this day. Let's just say I'm talking to the customer. Hey, Mr. Customer, so I got us down here for Saturday at 3 o'clock. We're going to go over those solutions for you, come up with a plan for you, get your thoughts on it, and then I'm going to ask you, make a decision. Is there any reason why, that you can think of between now and then why you wouldn't be able to make that appointment? So that's an example. I asked that question for that. So there's no reason why I can't ask that question for an interview, like, hey, we're going to set you up for that interview. Is there any reason why you might not be able to make that appointment, that interview? Because not saying that that's going to help the chances of, probably if they're not showing up to the interview, I don't want to hire them anyway, obviously. They're not reliable. It doesn't scream reliability to me. It's in fact the opposite. So, but I think there's a lot of value in the way I structure my pitch to people to get them to make decisions and to get them to understand what my intentions are. And so really that could be applied to anything in your life. And I've talked a lot about this with people, like all the sales and strategies I learned, they could really be applied to life. I mean, you could use this in like, friends, you're getting together for a barbecue, like you set up at a barbecue with your friends, and it's a couple weeks out, and you ask them like, I'm gonna plan on being there. Is there any reason why you might cancel between now that you might cancel that appointment? It's something to ask, you know what I mean? Because then the variables could be used in a dating aspect. You could ask somebody like, hey, this is great. Yeah, I can't wait to go out with you. We're gonna go to dinner on this day. Is there any reason why you wouldn't be able to make this date? You know what I mean? Like I'm looking forward to it. So I'd like to know, is there any reason why you wouldn't be able to make this? Is there something that could come up? It's kind of funny to think about, but it totally can be applied. So anyways, my rant is, people, if you're going to apply to a job, keep the fucking job. I've never scheduled an appointment in my life to a job interview that I never went to. I don't know what's going on with people these days. I didn't know that was a thing, to set up an appointment that you don't even show up to. Like, do you not understand what it takes? Like, this involved me packing up, allocating this time, going downtown to the downtown office and meeting them, sitting there for half an hour, calling them, following up like, hey, Richard, just making sure we're still on for this appointment. It's 8:30. We had an appointment at 8. Seeing if you forgot. What's the status? Get back to me. And they never even call you back. It's like, dude, I just wasted my fucking couple hours here. I could have been doing something else. Like, I'm a busy guy. I'm a productive guy. I don't have time to be wasting on that. And so that's how I'm going to start responding to people. I'm going to start handling that. I just didn't think that was a thing. And I'm just never shocked anymore with the type of situations that kind of introduce themselves when you're an employer. When you hire people, it's crazy. So the work ethic is deteriorating, and I guess the interview ethic is deteriorating, or you can't even get people to show up to interview. It's crazy. So yeah, people, get it together. Don't apply to a job that you can't answer the phone to, and most certainly don't set up an appointment with a busy business owner to not show up to. All right. I think I'm gonna have to train my receptionist to maybe start doing the interview just so I can relieve myself. And then maybe I'll do a 2-part interview where I'll set it up with her. She does a preliminary interview, and then she gives me her her thesis on this guy, the bullet points and what she thought of him, and all the questions I'm going to lay out for her to ask, and then I'll make that decision. Like, sounds like he's a good candidate for a follow-up interview. What do you think? And maybe I think I like that idea actually, because if someone shows up the first time, chances are they're probably going to show up a second time. So see already how I'm pivoting and how I'm thinking about how to adjust to people's, I'm controlling time. This is an example of me. We didn't get into that topic. So we'll talk about that next week, about how you create time, you control time, and instead of being a slave and subjected to time, and being subjected to the will of someone else's time. Because that example, that's sad. I basically am at the mercy of someone else's time. He controlled my time is what happened there. And I don't like that thought at all, especially me. I'm so busy. I needed to use that time for productivity and somewhere else. So anyways, quick question of the day, and then we'll let you guys go. How fast are you getting back to people? All right. Do you get back to people, and how fast do you do it? Speed is, in my opinion, one of the biggest things that puts confidence in a person. When someone reaches out to you and asks you a question, get back to them quick. It just screams reliability. It screams confidence, surety, certainty. Like, this person's got his game tight. He knows what he's doing. I can trust him. So how fast are you getting back to people? Whether it's an email, a text, or a phone call, or a Zoom link. When someone reaches out to you and tries to get your attention, how quick do you get back to them? Now think about how much your life would change and people will respect you if you fixed that alone. If all you did was fix the speed factor of the time in which you got back to somebody or responded to somebody. And how much more value would you get? Like, if someone texted you and you texted them back, how much more value do you think there'd be if you called them? Someone texted you and asked you a question, you called them and say, hey, I seen your text, just want to get back to you. You think there's a lot more value in that? You think your life will change? You think doing something that small will change your life or give people more respect in you? My answer is yes. So think about it, entertain that idea, try it, experiment with it for a week, 2 weeks. Make it a commitment to just get back to people immediately with whatever it is. Call them, don't text. Try to just over deliver on the reception, and I guarantee you're going to see a dramatic change. You're going to feel better about yourself too, by the way. And this is how I operate my business, and I get nothing but positive results. I just responded to somebody earlier today that had a question about a delay in a product and when their installation is going to happen. She reached out to me on a Facebook Messenger. What did I do? I called her. Hey Janet, how's it going? It's Ben. Got your Facebook message. Just wanted to get in front of this and contact you as soon as I got your message. Wanted to give you an update, let you know what we're looking at here. We'll get to you as soon as possible. I appreciate your patience. I'm sorry that we had this delay. It was unforeseen. I take full accountability for it. We're going to get you taken care of though, all right? So just bear with us and we'll get you to the finish line. You see how that just comes? I mean, when you just handle stuff like that and you get in front of it, the positivity and the reciprocation I got from her, she was like, that's great. I love, I appreciate you getting back to me and calling me. I really appreciate that. I look forward to hearing from you. It's just a positive experience. So just an example of how I get in front of things and how quickly and how I respond to people and how it's changed my life, to be honest. Because there's times where I would hide behind emails and send them out and think I was doing something, when in fact I was putting a Band-Aid over a scab. It's much better to get in front of it in the most efficient way. So if that means calling somebody and just addressing it immediately, you're going to get much more results and you're going to get better feedback, and it's going to create a level of positivity with that. All right. So try it out. Give it a shot. Let me know what happens. Other than that, yeah, that's it for the episode 73. You can find this podcast, the live streams on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. You can find the posted content rather on Instagram, Twitter, and Spotify. All right. So follow, share, subscribe, like the page, give me some love, help me keep this momentum going. Let me know what you liked about this podcast. Let me know what you didn't like about it. Let me know if it's boring as shit. Let me know if it got you thinking a little bit about your life, if it got you thinking about anybody else's life. Give me some feedback. All right, drop some comments in there. Let me know if I'm doing a shitty job. Let me know if I should kick rocks, if I should hang it up, or let me know if you like what I'm doing. All right, I love that. I love the criticism. I love the positive reinforcement. I love all of it. Bring it, give it to me. Other than that, I'm gonna leave you guys to go and have a fantastic week. I'll see you next week, episode 74 on Saturday. So yeah, enjoy your week, all right? But also keep it contagious and keep it viral. See you guys.